Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport, Infrastructure and Communities.
Thank you. I'll be sharing my time with the Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul. Whenever a government intervenes, it must prove that such intervention is both necessary and just. The Labour Minister's bill today proposes an intervention that must pass these same tests. Is it necessary? Is it just? To consider the necessity test, let us consult history, geography, and economics. History tells us that British Columbia would not have joined Canada without the promise of a railroad, and John A. Macdonald confirmed that the nation would not have survived its embryonic state without the tracks. Rail, he said, would, quote, give us a great, a united, a rich, an improving, a developing Canada, instead of making us a tributary to American laws, American railways, American bondage, American tolls, and American freights. In 1885, Donald A. Smith pounded the last spike into a rail line that would climb over the Rocky Mountains, cut through the prairies, link communities, and unite Canada from sea to sea. We would not exist, quite simply, Mr. Speaker, without the railway, and its necessity lives on to this day. In the 127 years since the completion of that project, geography has made rail essential to our well-being. 5,500 kilometers separate Cape Spear, Newfoundland from the Yukon-Alaska border, giving us the second largest country in the world and the 8th least dense population on the planet. In such a country, freight moves roughly 70% of surface goods every single year, which brings us to economics. If Canadian Pacific were one of many rail lines, we would not be having this conversation. Shippers would simply hire another rail line and continue about their business until the strike was done. But it is not just another rail line. It is one of only 2 Class 1 railways. It has 24,000 kilometers of rail that links 6 provinces, all the way from the Metro Vancouver port on the west to the Montreal port in the east. It handles 74% of potash, 57% of wheat, 53% of coal, 39% of container traffic. What would happen to all of the workers that depend on potash, wheat, coal, container shipping if it were to sit idly during a strike? Factories and farms, mills and mines can't reach their markets. Grains pile up. Workers down their tools. Consumers pay more and wait longer. All at a cost of $540 million per week to the Canadian economy. So, Mr. Speaker, does this Back to Work bill pass the necessity test? Economics makes Canadian Pacific necessary to rail service. Geography makes rail service necessary to our well-being, and history makes it necessary to our nation's very existence. Yes, it is necessary for the strike to end and for us to end it. The second test for government intervention is whether it is just. I detest with every fiber of my being unnecessary and unjust state intervention. It is good, therefore, that Back to Work legislation is rare. Last year, there were 407 collective bargaining agreements reached across Canada in federal jurisdiction. we legislated back-to-work laws twice. That is less than 0.5% of the cases. Yet opponents of this bill will argue that in a free enterprise government like ours should never intervene in a private sector bargaining dispute. But the government is already involved. Section 70.1 of the Canadian Labour Code forces workers to pay union dues, even if they do not wish to be members of the union. The law forces money out of workers' pockets into union coffers. The union has the power to shut down a workplace, even for those workers who do not support the strike. These legal powers give the union a state-enforced monopoly on labor in the rail sector. They want the law to grant them monopolistic powers without any laws to limit the damage that these powers can do to unwilling bystanders. The bystanders in this dispute are the workers who do not want to be on strike, the farmers trying to ship their goods, the consumers trying to buy them, and every Canadian who must bear part of the $540 million a week cost of this strike. Given these facts, it is necessary for Parliament to act, it is just for Parliament to act, and act we will. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? L'honorable député de Gênes-Lebert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for his speech. And there are aspects of that I agree with. What I don't agree with is the use of the power of this government to inhibit the collective bargaining process. We can't deny, you cannot deny that the personal or the hint of government intervention had no role in making the management of CP not bargain in good faith, because the government was going to do the work for them. This is the issue. It is not a matter of whether it is the right time or the wrong time. It is wrong, I believe, for the government to send a message to management that we are going to step in, because the management then basically says, we don't have to do anything, the government will do it for us. That is an attack on workers' rights. And workers are taxpayers. These same workers are taxpayers, and they help drive the economy. If they don't make a decent salary, how do they pay in? How do they work for the economy? How do we resolve that issue, sir?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, I thank the member for his question. He seems to suggest that the government should not get involved in these kinds of disputes, but I'm telling him that according to Section 70.1, government and law is already involved. The law forces workers at CP to be members of the Teamsters Union, even if they don't want to be. They have to pay in through union dues. So the government is already involved at that point. It gives the union an enormous amount of power. And when the union exercises that power to cost the economy $540 million a year, to harm farmers, workers in manufacturing plants, workers in mines, and the rest of the Canadian economy, it is the responsibility of the government to act to protect all of those innocent bystanders against union activities. Thank you.
Here.
Questions and comments? L'honorable député de Lac-Saint-Louis.
Mr. Speaker, my question to the honourable member is why the improvisation? The government appears to be improvising when it comes to labour relations. One would expect that labour policy would be rational, it would be systematic. So we would say this is how we're going to approach strikes by major corporations in this country, and we would have a schedule of major corporations that are not allowed to whose employees are not allowed to strike, and there would be an alternative model of arbitration to deal with those situations. So my question is, why don't we have a consistent approach, one way or the other, to labor relations in this country? Why are we improvising? Why the ad hocery? You know, Mr. Speaker, when I was taking an industrial relations course in university, the professor called this kind of behavior permanent exceptionalism. Where's the systematic approach to labor relations in this country?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member seems to suggest that we should be outlawing strikes at CP. I don't agree with that. I believe that, in fact, in the vast majority of cases, it's hard to follow the opposition logic, because one of them says everyone should be on strike all the time. The other one says they should all be banned from striking. We're the sensible ones in the middle over here. We believe that in the vast majority of cases, collective bargaining agreements can be arrived at in a completely free and non-interventionist fashion. That's why 407 of them occurred 405 of them occurred last fiscal year, and we only intervened in 2 of them, less than 1/2%. Our approach is to minimize the intervention of government, but in instances where the unions use the power that is vested in them by the fact that they force every member to be part of their organization, to shut down big parts of the Canadian economy, it is our responsibility to step forward, protect jobs, and to protect the livelihoods of millions of Canadians. That's what we're doing in this situation.
Resuming debate, reprise de débat.